The Ways and Means for March 2nd, 2022 is now in session. Please rise and join me. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So, I would like to take this moment to introduce the two new Ways and Means members, at least in person. So we have Chris Campbell over here, and we have Ed Parsons over here. So welcome and welcome.
Thank you. The rookies bring us coffee, is that it?
Well, I'm sorry?
They bring us coffee?
Right, and they get your budget book.
Coffee.
And then after that, don't stretch it any further.
And the dinosaurs will keep you in check, right?
Right, exactly. Anyways, I'm going to jump, is there any public participation on the phone? Not seeing or hearing any hands get raised, we'll move on to our main stuff. So that would be the budget overview. So let me figure out how to share on this again. And we'll have John and Whitney come up.
Steve, should we move over here since there's nobody there? Or
Yeah, please. That way people can see you.
Steve, I think you're muted.
I should be on the mic. Oh. It's over here.
Room is muted.
There.
Oh, thank you. Wow.
Room is muted.
This doesn't do it anymore?
I don't know. I'm careful about.
So I will back, so welcome to the Ways and Means meeting for March 2nd, 2022. I'll repeat the whole meeting. I'd like to take a moment to welcome Chris Campbell and Ed Parsons to the committee for the BCAT audience. And then I'll go on to budget participation. Public participation. Anyone on the line for public participation? Seeing and hearing none, we'll move on to the budget overview. As soon as I figure out where the sharing is, we'll get started.
Jim,
Yes.
would like to mention Nikki Cadillac, who's got a new journalistic thing for Burlington. I think the name of it is Burlington Buzz. So we could read about all our exploits, particularly yours, Mr. Chairman.
In addition to hearing what's going on BCAT.
In addition to that. Thank you, Roger.
I'm not sure whether to say thanks or no thanks.
Too early to tell.
What's that?
Too early to tell.
Too early to tell. I'll have to check it out. John, please take it over.
I think Whitney's going to start.
Okay.
Kind of give an overview of what you have in front of you today. And
Quick housekeeping, and then we'll turn over to the meat and potatoes. So I think it looks like everybody already got their budget books, but if you haven't, they're in the room over there. I did want to quickly just say thank you to the town staff that helped us very quickly put those all together in the last couple of days. We had some retirements in the administrator's office, so we had a new team. So we had a new team putting them together, and everybody worked really hard, and I just wanted to publicly thank them for that. And also for, as always, the departments who worked really hard to get everything done in time to have it before you guys tonight. So something exciting for this year is we actually have all of the tabs filled for once. Usually the first night we are still missing some. So we actually don't even have a tab for debt service, so that's just stuck in the back there if you're looking for it, because it did not exist prior. But to note, that could change slightly over time, but it's a pretty much on target at this point. So other accounts and debt service are tucked in the back there. In the front, you have the scorecard as of tonight, which has both sides operating and accommodated this year. The ones that are still being finalized are marked in blue, or highlighted in blue, just to keep an eye out for that. And then you also have the proposed FTE chart for all departments. And then, obviously, the departmental budgets after that. Everything that's in the book is posted online. As if and when revisions are made, we'll post it online to the website, as well as send out copies of the revised versions to replace in the binders, or bring them to the meetings, whatever works. And I believe last week we emailed out the website login instructions. If anyone has any trouble accessing that, if you could let me know, we can troubleshoot that. And I think that's pretty much it for housekeeping, unless anyone has any questions.
Thanks, Whitney. And login works great. Just trying to find the FY '23 scorecard and FTEs. I see FY '22 on the website, but I'm not sure what.
Okay, it may not have saved properly. I can run in and just
Okay,
double check that,
thanks.
resave it. Both the FTE and scorecard are not showing?
Or I'm not finding them.
Okay.
One or the other.
No, it should be right under the departmental budget, so. On the front page where it says FY '23 documents, it should be right under the budgets.
Okay, it has the department budgets, the presentation schedule, and subcommittee
Okay,
assignments.
I'll go resave that, so you should be able to access that in a minute.
Great, thank you.
And a big kudo, oh, sorry, Roger, go ahead.
You're
Go
the
ahead.
chair, you get to talk whenever you want.
No, no, go ahead, go ahead.
So you mentioned that they're on the website, but if I understand correctly, they're on the Ways and Means website.
Correct.
When will they be publicly visible?
So we have the public copies of the binders are put, tomorrow, we're putting in the departments, and then I can, do that same link that we did the last couple of years for, the public to look at the parts that they need to be able to see.
And the public places are where again?
Council on Aging, Public Library, and Town Clerk's Office.
Great, thanks.
Thanks.
All I wanted to say is a big kudos to the town accountant's office to get all this stuff together. It's, given that we're starting late this year, it's good that everything's mostly put together and ready to go, and we're eager to get started on the next budget year. Thank you.
Thank you.
John?
Okay, you want to swap so I can
Yeah.
get that? Oh, this is a setup with this chair, I can already tell. The broken
You can move the microphone too, it's got a really long cable on
Doesn't have much slack. Try to pull it.
it. It used to.
I think they zip tied them when they put the new carpet in. I hope everybody took notice of it.
Oh,
Economizing on wire.
That's the smell, okay.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So the purpose of these slides tonight is to just provide a high-level summary of what you have in front of you. We're not here to debate the merits of the request, but just kind of point out and highlight some of them. There'll be plenty of time for the debate as we get into the subcommittee meetings. On your first slide, is just kind of a high level, just what the operating budget for the town was. As submitted to you, the town operating budget is within guidelines. It's right at the 3.5 that was approved a month ago tonight. Every year we ask our budget season, we ask our department heads to take a look at their budget, take a look at their operations. Is there anything we're doing differently now? Do we still need all the same resources? Anything we can change? And if so, factor in your contractual obligations, if you have any contracts with vendors or things like that, and any contractual obligations as far as personnel goes with moving steps, to factor those in, and then anything beyond that, that's where we have the conversation with them to go over it before it makes it to you all. So we would call this a level service budget with a few initiatives, and we'll talk some more about the initiatives as we get to the next few slides. The big unknown for us with this 3.5 is that we don't have any settled collective bargaining agreements for next year. All of our union contracts expire on this June 30th. We do have a healthy number in negotiated settlements, which we believe will cover us. But none of the budgets as submitted include any wage adjustments that would come as part of a collective bargaining agreement. Also included today, which I think is the first time at our first meeting, we've included almost all of the accommodated accounts, and those are tracking right where we thought they were going to be. About a month ago, we had done a lot of preliminary work to try to get those nice and tight before we came. They're not totally completed, but the 5.5 that we were estimating when we first came here for guidelines, looks like we're right in the ballpark with that. We do have two that are still open. one big one is special ed. We won't have that till at least April 1st, given the way the law works. There could be move-ins that, or move-outs that we would still be responsible for. So we're a few weeks away from having that number, but we have a placeholder in there that we think is conservative. And then the two non-member regional schools, that's Minuteman and Essex Tech. We don't have finalized from them because kids have still applied and not yet found out if they've been accepted. We know who's there and who's going back next year, but for freshmen versus graduating seniors, we won't have that for another few weeks too. That's normal and that happens every year. Yep.
So when you say that the contracts aren't complete, so when we look at specific departments' budgets, will the salary line item be identical to last year?
Nope.
Assuming no FTE changes or anything?
That's a good question. They may in some cases but they probably won't because anybody that's working their way through the steps the steps would be calculated
Okay, so
in.
step increases will be in there, but there won't be sort of a
Wage
2%
adjustment.
wage adjustment. So in general, are department budgets below the 3.5% because they haven't had the wage increase? That's part of the,
Yep, we're gonna get to that slide. 24 out of 31 are below.
okay.
But negotiated settlements should be the balance.
Exactly. The point is, they have to go up less if, when you add in negotiated settlements, you want to hit the 3.5%.
Right.
Steve, you go to the next slide.
Yep.
So right on cue, John, most departments include only the contractual obligations with no wage adjustment. Most departments are submitted below the 3.5 guideline, as we would expect. There were 7 that were over, so if you were looking at the checklist, those would probably stick out and have some questions, so we'll try to address those right away. There's like I said, 7 of them. There's some smaller budgets where a couple of $1,000s will result in a large percent. And there are 3 of those this year. There's legislative committees with a 37% increase, but really that's only a couple $1,000s because we're adding some recording secretaries to 3 committees that didn't have one. Similar in Board of Registrars, there's a 9% increase, but that's really $1,000 to cover the additional needs for the census and the mailing. In Historical Commission, the number is 11%, but that's really $1,000 for them to be able to do some upgrading of the website and things like that. And that might not be needed, but that's what was submitted, so we move it forward. Another one that could pretty much be considered the same as contractual is the town clerk. The number is almost 20%, pops out right away, but it really only has to do with the election cycle and the fact that there's 3 elections next fiscal year. So they have to factor those in. It is a big dollar increase and a big percentage increase, but there isn't anything else in there that's causing that to be over. And then there's 3 other departments that are mostly due to, we talked about before, some initiatives, and this is either adding an FTE or restructuring an FTE, and we'll get more into that on the next slide. And those are the planning board at almost 19%, the MIS just under 10%, and the select board, town administrator, just under 10%. That one kind of goes hand in hand with a change in the accounting department too. So we'll get to that on the next slide.
I'm on FT Town Operating. You want me to go next?
Perfect.
All right.
So the net result of FTEs and the budget as a whole for the town side is just under 2%, just under 2 FTEs being requested. There are some that are new ads. There are some that are, there's some restructuring. So it's not actually technically an add of an FTE, but we're going to point them out. And then there's one department that's actually decreasing an FTE. So I just want to spend a quick second on each of them. I won't get into too much detail, especially to the departments that don't fall under the town administrator's purview. So the first one, as you see, is the planning board. On the previous slide, you saw that there was an almost 20% increase. This is wholly because of this new request. This is a code enforcement officer that's been discussed a little bit. I'm not sure about at Ways and Means, but in the previous meetings the last few years, Without this new ad, they'd be more like, they'd be under 2% for their ask. So this new ad is for a code enforcement officer, and I'll let the planning board discuss with their subcommittee what that is. The next new whole FTE is in the rec commission. Is asking for an assistant director. Their budget as submitted was under guidelines and includes that ask in that budget that was submitted. So there was obviously some other adjustments made to their budget to come in like that. MIS is, I'm sorry,
Phil.
go ahead.
Thank you. How many retirements have we had? And have you factored in step savings and longevity savings in this budget with those
Yes.
retirements?
Yes.
How many have we had?
I don't know the exact number, just on this floor alone, we had quite a few, which is, I'll get a little bit into that when we get to that one. But we can get that for you, Phil. You want throughout the whole town?
Yeah, through the system and the school department, if possible.
Okay. All right. So MIS, you saw on the previous slide, was about a 10% request, increase for their request. That has to do with an initiative to try to get some hours dedicated to cybersecurity. The department has met extensively with the ISAC committee and has been working hard with beefing up our cybersecurity presence and awareness. And this is something that, this is not exactly what they asked for, but it was sort of what we could fit in the budget. They were looking for a person to be dedicated to that full-time. After we worked it through with them, we thought maybe we could do it a different way and still dedicate some resources to that. Exactly how that's gonna play out is a little bit unknown right now, but we have about $35,000 dedicated to people to do it. And then they have a couple of items that are new to them, some scanning software and some cloud software that's new to the budget too, that is part of what makes up the 10%. So as far as FTE goes, we're not exactly sure what nail down the exact amount of the FTE, but it looks like it will probably be backfilling some network repair hours while some of the existing folks dedicate their hours directed towards cybersecurity. In DPW, which also wasn't on the previous page because their submission, including the restructuring of a position, still came in under guidelines. They have asked to reinstitute a position that existed previously. It was the operations manager. And this is sort of to improve the support structure of the department. As everyone here knows and agonizes over, that John Sanchez is going to be leaving us next winter. And, we want to get this support in place as soon as we can, so to queue us up to be successful when John does move on to his next chapter. So the position that they're looking to reinstitute is the operations manager. It's sort of that layer between the director and the actual operations of the department. It's so not every decision has to make its way all the way up to the director level, that there's someone that the department heads can go to within DPW to help run the day-to-day operations. So that position was added and was offset by decreasing another position within the budget that netted out to be about a $40,000 cost after you net out the position that we're going down and new ad. So it doesn't show up as an FTE, just wanted to point it out that it is a new position. Similar in the select board town administrator's office, there was several retirements in that office, 3 as a matter of fact, 1 fairly new, and the total FTE, what we're asking to do is make the town administrators, the assistant town administrator's position full-time, rather than being a shared position between the accounting office and the town administrator's office. So really what will happen is there'll be a new town accountant that's hired. But budget-wise, the FTE ad would be in the town administrator's office. We're doing that through a restructuring of the position that we're losing to help offset the cost of adding this, taking it from structurally making a managerial professional position versus, a support staff position that was existing. So if you were to net out the cost of adding the new position, less the restructuring, and the combination of that happening with the accounting department, there's a big decrease in the accounting department. This ask cost about $28,000. I'm sorry, $25,000. So again, no actual net FTE, but a cost associated with it, so we just wanted to point it out. The last FTE-related position is in the assessor's office, and I'll let them talk more about that when they come, but they're actually going down a position because of some organizational changes they're gonna make there in the way they do data collection versus an employee versus a contractor. So that nets out to one less FTE, but that any savings on that will be spent on contracting, the support for data collection for residential, and the support for commercial valuations, which is Jim. So I know that's a lot. Before we go to the next slide, if anybody has any questions on, that was a lot of words.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just two brief things. First of all, on Public Works, I know we'll go into a lot more detail, but, so John Sanchez, has been kind of an omnibus, supervisor. And so we had facilities and cemetery and blah, 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 highway. Is that going to stay the same, and the operations manager will be sort of a level between introducing a level, but all of that trees up the same way?
Exactly. So last year, or I think it was last summer, we had a strategic planning meeting. John had kind of give us a heads up that you better start preparing over the next couple of years for
Right.
that I'm going to be going on. So we talked a little bit about the structure of the department and what structure would provide the most support for the new person to be successful. And John reviewed a bunch of different DPWs, and he'll get into this with all of you too, the structure of those. And it seemed like there was, the most successful was to have an operation head and a financial head that are sort of the top lieutenants for the director.
Okay, so
And that's kind of what we're,
so facilities is still into the operations, highways, sewer, water, all of it?
correct. So
Okay.
all of those, they're called superintendents that lead all those divisions.
I was
All
struggling
those-
with the word superintendent, right?
All of those division superintendents would now have someone to report to on a day-to-day basis and not directly to the director.
Okay, so that's something that we'll go into more detail on. In the assessor's office, are we gonna use more outside services
Yes,
as a result of this?
yes. So we use Patriot software to do
Right.
data collection now.
But we had reduced some of what they were doing for us. We're gonna increase that back up,
Correct.
and
The model is going to look similar to the way it did before.
I see. And I don't remember the costs associated with that. So that came under contracted services, but you ground that back into the FY '23 budget?
Correct. So
And-
the net result is about a $12,000 increase in their budget in total.
Okay,
That includes having a few staff that went up a step,
yeah.
and then the net
It would
total.
seem like, all right, that makes sense. I would have expected it to go up some, because we actually reduced quite a bit of money when we collapsed that down. And the last thing is on the MIS, all of the cyber work that we want to do, security and that sort of thing. Is there capital associated with that too? Purchasing of new things?
Not for what we're talking about, not with this specifically. There may be,
Are you expecting that?
we don't expect it this year, no.
Okay, so that leads to the last question, which is, to what extent has all of the changes that you're making been made convenient to protect the budget as opposed to this is really the way we want to set it up going forward? I'm not
yeah.
trying to be pejorative here.
No, I
mean,
get it.
Sometimes you have to accommodate to get there, but,
Yeah, and I think that was the case in MIS a little bit. This might not be the perfect solution, but it's a step towards the solution, and it gives us time to see if we have the skill set to do it on our own, to be able to do it with our folks dedicating
Try it out, yeah.
time to it, and, sort of use as a proof of concept.
all right, but for DPW anyway, you look at this as it's pretty much the structure
Yes.
that we should be able to live with, but obviously things can change.
Yeah, this is exactly what John recommended we do. We had a lot of conversations about it,
Right.
spent a lot of time on it.
We had some hires that had been open for a while in DPW, but they were down at the, I put it at the boots level. Was it in the water department?
Water department.
So have those gone away? Because we never did fill them.
So we've filled all the open positions. The one that's going to, and that included new positions that were added that were labor level positions. The position that's gonna go unfilled, and I'll let John talk to it in more detail, is gonna be at the treatment plant. We're down 2 operators, and we're only gonna hire 1, because eventually we're gonna close one of the treatment plants and have to lose positions through attrition anyway. So this was part of the plan, happened a little bit faster than we thought it would with someone leaving, but this was part of the plan.
Okay, thank you.
Bill?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. John, as a follow-up to Frank's question, are you satisfied, is the administration satisfied, and is the MIS department in complete agreement with your assessment of the resources that are being devoted to cybersecurity at this point?
Well, so at the meeting, I don't know if they just said it because they're afraid of Paul, but when they left the meeting, they said that this was better than they had hoped for. And
would
that
have
they,
hoped.
no, but that's being a little bit facetious, but they were happy with that and think that it's a good idea for us to be able to try it this way, see what sort of inroads we can make. They have a pretty detailed list of the exact tasks that aren't being done that we need someone to be dedicated to do, and feel like they can accommodate most of those doing it the way we're planning on doing it, and know that we're open for them to tell us if this model's not gonna work, and we'll have to go back to the drawing board.
And are we monitoring any attacks? Have we been attacked? Are we monitoring the number of attacks?
So we monitor every day. There's attempts every day for sure. We don't talk about it in public a lot, but I know that ISAC is kept in the loop on that and could probably
Yeah, so
comment safely.
from the ISAC perspective, we keep track of that kind of information, and we also had a conversation last night about the incidents or the events that are happening in Ukraine and how they could pertain to cybersecurity attacks here.
Well, I would follow up with you and Rob, then. Are you satisfied that we're spending enough resources on this?
This is definitely a step in the right direction. Clearly, there's bigger steps that we could take. We thought that bringing in like a CISA, which is almost like a CEO level type position for information security, was an extremely expensive budget add in the neighborhood usually of about at least $180,000 to $200,000. So it's pretty pricey. And we felt that there was a lot of stuff that we could do in the interim to get us to the place where we want to be without necessarily jumping up and trying to get a $200,000 hire.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, John.
Or if I could just add one thing to that too, we think that the added layer of the assistant town administrator will also add some support to them for some of the tasks that are, there's a lot of pushback on, and allow that position to sort of drive the bus with that too, and meet with department heads and make sure we're compliant to whatever we need to be doing for technology.
And if I could add to that, actually, the department heads, when we started this process back in July with the initial set of meetings, have been very responsive for the most part towards implementing the proposals that we're making. And they've asked some pretty tough questions, and they're pretty ready for it. We've had a couple of holdbacks, but not as many as we were fearful of, yeah. So we're making good progress, and the assistant town administrator has been a strong voice in this throughout, so we appreciate his vocality there.
Next slide.
Oh, sure. Did you have a question, Doug? I saw you pulling, okay.
So accommodated accounts, as Whitney was peacocking about earlier, we have most of the accommodated accounts in the book, which is unlike us with the original book. There are 2 open that we talked about a little bit. The drivers are the usual ones. It's OPEB, which we know. We're funding it based on the plan. It's a 9.3% increase annually, so that's good news. Middlesex retirement is right from the actuarial plan. That's 6.7% increase. That also takes into account the prompt payment discount that they provide. So if we pay in one payment in August, we get to take a pretty substantial discount, $200,000. So we do take advantage of that every year. And debt service, which that number is higher than it normally is, but that's going to be the norm going forward if we are to fund our capital plan the way it's set up right now. The next 10 years, we'll be looking at a number similar to that, growing at about $1 million a year with our debt service budget.
Mr. Chairman.
Rob?
Thanks. Does this take into account the rising interest rates?
It does because, I'm sorry, Rob, yes, Rob, for our plan, any for proposed debt, anything that hasn't been issued yet, we're pretty conservative. We use 4% for 20-year stuff, 4.5% for over. And even if they do go up 25, 50 basis points 3 or 4 times this year as expected, we think we're still going to be okay, at least for the plan as it exists right now, because we're conservative enough. If that continues much longer than this calendar year, we'll probably have to relook at the plan. We've had several meetings with our financial advisors, Hilltop, who had just had sales with both Western and Brookline that are both AAA like us, and we're still under 3 for 20-year notes, which is great. And I think that their opinion was the next increase that's coming on the 16th of March was already calculated in because the buyers are savvy. So to answer your question, Rob, we're good for now because of our conservative nature, but
I was watching the hearings today, and it looks like it's 25 basis points.
Mr. Chairman.
Phil?
Yeah, thank you. You have 8 million out in bands right now, right? Shouldn't we be locking those in long-term right now at 3.25?
yeah, so we have 6.5. We're gonna lock in half of it that we've spent. The other, we probably won't lock in because we're not gonna end up spending it all. And we're gonna lock in as much as we can because we have a refunding opportunity that we're costing out right now. Just 2 months ago, it was a significant savings that has eroded a little bit with the increase in the interest rates, not totally, obviously. And so Gary's actively watching that and is ready to pull the trigger if we can, when our bonds become callable in April. So when we do that, if we're gonna have to go out anyway, we'll probably long-term borrow whatever we need. But there will be some bands too, for sure.
Thank you, John.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. To take that just a bit further, do you know, it might be in the book, I can't go that fast. Do you know what percentage of the FY23 operating budget your anticipated total debt service will represent? What percentage of the whole operating budget?
Yeah, so, percent of the debt service as a percent of the levy is just under 6 for FY '23 as presented, and as a total, percent of total revenues, it's just under 5. So that's up a little bit from where we were.
It's still very good, though.
Yeah, it's gonna grow pretty fast, 10 years we're talking about in the 8s,
Yeah,
which is still okay, considered okay by the bond agencies.
right. Okay, thank you. That's good information.
Thanks, Frank.
Another thing on the health insurance, which was a bit of good news, was on the accommodators, the health insurance. Gary did a lot of work on that. As you remember, last year, it was quite detailed report of what we expect to spend each year. So he just finished that hot off the presses this morning, and it was about 4%, and we were kind of projecting maybe it could be as high as 6. So that's some pretty good news there. And as I mentioned before, special ed is the vault one, and we won't know for about a month, but fingers crossed. Last year, we had a really good year. They actually had a decrease in that budget for the first time, and it has to be forever, but I don't know for sure.
I think they had fewer clients.
Yeah.
That makes the biggest difference.
Frank?
One more thing, thank you, Mr. Chairman, on the health insurance. Are there any plan design changes that are part of that 4%, or is it pretty much the plan is the same?
Plan is the same. We had the annual meeting with the committee in set the rates going into next year with no plan design changes.
So we must have had we must be I don't want to use the wrong word.
Younger workforce.
Well, no, I think that may be true too, but we must be anticipating that we're gonna continue a good claims history.
We've experienced great history over the last few months,
I mean,
as it most people have.
Almost abnormally good, it seems.
Correct,
but-
and Gary's sensitivity analysis includes some rebound of that, people that have been putting stuff off.
Right.
That are gonna start going back, but even our expert that came in and worked on what our premiums were gonna be for this year during the bid process, said we were we were in the ballpark with our estimates.
It's great.
Right?
So this is just the bottom line. What we talked about, if the budget as submitted is about a 4.4% increase in the ballpark with what we talked about at guidelines, and if everything were approved the way it is and nothing changed on the revenue side either, that would result in about a 4.8% increase in the levy. Again, right in the ballpark of what we talked about. But this process is just starting, so there could be some changes coming. We'll continue to follow the state budget. The governor's budget had some good news in it for us for Chapter 70. Potentially some more good news with what is it called? UGGA, stands for General Government Aid, but I can't remember what the U stands for at the moment. Unrestricted General Government Aid. I wasn't gonna call it UGA, but I guess I'll just call it UGA.
Is that the cherry sheet?
That's on the cherry sheet.
Yeah.
Okay.
So there could be some potential tax levy relief coming if the governor's budget holds true, and it is an election year, so hopefully it will. That's some great news. There was some changes in the Chapter 70 formula. The biggest one being that changed the what classified, how we classified low income. So we got several hundred more kids that were classified as low income, increased the amount you get per student in your foundation budget too. So, that's gonna be really good news for us if it happens, and that, if that were to stay what it is, we could estimate that the levy increase could go from 4.8 to 3.8. It could go down a whole point if that happens, so.
Wow.
But it's really too early to say.
It's certainly too early to say. I left out my Chicken Little statement, Roger, you're right. Disaster is right around the corner. It's too easy, too early.
Frank says hold your powder.
And you don't really know until the tax rate gets set in November, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
October, November, so
Right.
we're doing a 6-month, 7th-month projection here.
Yep.
You're gonna regret that.
Oh, never gonna miss a meeting. Never gonna miss another meeting.
Any further questions? I think that was the end of his presentation. Frank?
One last thing, so I'm assuming, according to plan, there's no free cash that's going towards revenue offsets here.
Correct. Nothing in the operating budget that would be free cash.
Right, okay.
None of the federal money either.
Correct.
Well, no, I thought you were gonna.
What,
use-
500,000?
Yeah,
Yeah,
half
for
a
the
million.
water, yeah.
Right, okay. And there's another year of that that'll go to FY '24?
24, correct.
Thank you.
Anything else?
That must be on the summary page, right? That 500,000?
Yeah.
Thank you, Chair. So do you have any estimate of what the capital budget is likely to be this year?
I think we're still trying to finalize it, but we expect to probably do about 4 million, since we had a little bit more free cash this year than we have. We're also using more that went into water stabilization, but I think we're looking at around 4 million, and we may have a couple of things we asked to cherry pick to keep off the debt schedule too. So I think we'll use more than we have recently. At least that'll be our request.
Thank you.
Yeah, speaking about that, Lynn just pushed out the reminder that the 45-day deadline for the final warrant articles for the May town meeting is coming up. I forget the exact date, but I think it's at the end of this month, so,
Yeah, they're due on the 25th, I think.
yeah, something like that. So we still have some time for those to come in. So next week, we'll get started with the first of the budget reviews. The departments that are on our plate are Human Resources, Conservation, Council on Aging, and plus the local transportation portion of that. legal, select board, and town administrator, and the accounting group.
Steve, can I add one thing that I forgot to mention when we were on the FTE chart was that the administration had worked with the subcommittee, both you and Frank and Mike Hardy and David at one point, on creating a new document to try to add some consistency to the backup received for new FTE requests. So the departments that see that their department has an FTE request here or a restructuring should expect that detail to be submitted to them. So keep an eye out for that. We hope that going forward, we'll have it when we do the budget as part of that detail, but it's new this year and we sort of just finalized it this week. So just for those subcommittees that have a department that's adding FTEs, they should expect
That
some
cover
detail.
sheet, yeah.
I was just thinking earlier today, it seems like every year as we go through the process, we find something where we say, oh, next year we should consider this or really focus on it. And if I remember right, last year, we talked about some kind of better insight into grants that people may be receiving or applying for and what they would mean for the next year or 2 years later in the budget if we commit to hiring a part-time social worker for the police. I mean, I think it might have been the police that it came up with, because you get these grants for 1 or 2 years and then all of a sudden we're on the hook for another FTE. I've heard a couple of things about other grants that people were applying for that sound really cool because the state or the federal government will pay for it, but you know, we had talked about asking department heads to maybe be more upfront that, hey, we're applying for this, or you know what I'm saying? Am I making
Right.
sense here?
Yeah, you're making sense.
Steve, could I
Please.
just take a shot at that? So that's a great question, Doug, and we'll be back here at some point to talk a little bit about that when we talk about what the plan is for ARPA, which we don't have a solid plan yet. That's why we're not here yet. But it may include, it will include something like that. It will include a portion of the mental health clinician that's at the police station. It will include offsetting some hours to get some backlog from the youth and family services. And it may include other things like that. And the reason we're aiming towards using that funds is because it's a multiple year, and we're not sure that those needs are still gonna be there in a couple of years. So it will be a good source to use those. As for departments that have a regular, have any personnel any personnel paid from a grant on a regular basis, we put it in their budget book and we show an offset line. So we show the people, and then we have a reduction in the budget that's being offset by a grant. So they've worked on that for a few years through a lot of work from Whitney and through recommendations from John on doing that. So I'm not saying there's not anything we miss, but for personnel or things that's going to be reoccurring, we do try to identify that right away, and we will be back to talk about an extension of that from ARPA.
Right.
Mike Hardy. Sorry, I just noticed your hand is raised.
No worries. Thanks, Mr. Chairman. So is now a good time? You want me to kind of talk about the new position request form, the kind of the chronological
Please.
process? Okay. So the committee remembers last year, I guess it was, or last season, we kind of reviewed this form, this new position request form. And that's what John referenced when he was talking about new positions. And the departments that are requesting the positions, they'll be getting their forms in hopefully next couple of weeks. But the overall kind of flow that we talked about with this is that a department that is requesting a new position is going to fill out this new position request form, and at the time their budget, they'll have that ready at the time their budget is submitted. This year, there's going to be a little lag because it's kind of a new process. So when that budget gets submitted, then the town administrator or whatever the responsible oversight committee, rec commission, library folks and so forth will kind of review that new position request, make sure, at the same time they're reviewing the budget, and make sure if there's any additional information they feel is necessary, they can kind of have a back and forth with the department to get all the, justification, description of the position, and that type of stuff onto the form. Then the town administrators, town administration, at the time of the budget overview and presentation meeting, that's tonight, we'll kind of review what the FTE requests are for this year, that's what we got from John earlier. Thank you, John. And then hopefully at that point, going forward, that form will be available with the budgets for the Ways and Means Committee to look at. If anybody on the committee reviewing that stuff has any questions or needs additional information, I think it's probably good to go through the subcommittee chair to request that additional information. And then, as usual, when the subcommittees meet with their departments reviewing the budget, they'll review the position requests at that same time. And then lastly, we'll just vote on the overall department budget, including that position request, just as part of the budget vote. So that was kind of the process that we identified to kind of go through this. And as John said, we're trying to introduce some consistency and make sure everybody has the information that's needed for us to understand the justifications and so forth of the new position.
And I want to thank the committee of Mike and Frank and John Eiler, put all that together in the work they did with the cooperation of the administration, both the town administrator's office and plus Joanne Faust in HR. They did a fantastic job putting it together, so I appreciate that. John?
I actually just want to backtrack 1 second, just regarding Doug's point. And by the way, thank you for adding that stuff on the grants on most of the forms. I know it's a pain in the butt. I was wondering from the point of view of schools, and I don't know if this is a question for Roger or in the past, I haven't been able to figure out, how much of the school's budget is covered by grants. Do you have a sense of what the total is? Or I guess why I'm asking is if you could arrange that, one could figure out what that number is, that would be great. In the past, it seems like you kind of have to go through a million line items and add them up, or if there is some more clever way of getting that number, that would be fabulous.
Yeah, we can try to summarize that. I mean, it is buried in individual programs that have different grants.
Right, so it'd be interesting to know, just like with other departments, how much are we depending on these grants, and if, they sort of dwindled away, what would we need to replace it with to keep the level of service where it is?
Yeah, I think it's a pretty small fraction of the budget overall, but I don't have a number, so.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Probably, 1 or 2%, and that's still a lot of money.
That's what I imagined, but it would be good to know.
The budget's pretty big to begin with. So.
I'm hoping that's the answer. Thank you.
So seeing no further questions, there's just the matter of minutes. There's been a couple of updates. Thank you very much, John.
Just only minutes.
What's that?
No.
Sorry.
Roger was being obtuse.
There were a couple of updates from John and from Ed, if you wanted to just summarize those quickly, and then I can update the minutes.
Okay.
We can decide whether we want to vote on them or wait till next week.
Yeah, I don't, my edits weren't, nothing earth-shattering. I just had taken Cody Case and Kelly Pappas off of the absent list since they're not members.
Correct.
Article 8 summary, I was suggesting rewording just a little bit to say it was desirable to replace the funds. Article 9 needed to have a vote of unanimous added to it, and just clarify a little bit that this on the ride sharing that, or the Ubers and Lyfts, the 20 cents is collected for every ride in the shade in Burlington, and of that, 10 is transferred to Burlington. Article 11, I think had a typo, should be 1.5 million. And then finally, the budget guideline vote should also include that the accommodated guideline was 5.75.
0.7%. Yep. And Ed?
I have one suggestion, a very small one, in the budget summit overview. Talks about the residential increase being 264. It probably should say average. Because
Yes,
not-
average, that's a.
Not every person sees either that little or that much.
That's correct.
Move to approve the minutes as amended.
1 second.
And you gotta be quick when Phil's got the gun.
Yes.
Only with regards to Article 11, it was 1.5 million, not the 150 that was there. It stated that we were accepting the MSBA. We were accepting the MSBA granting program, which is a multi-step process. And the needs that were explained are appropriate to explain the needs for the whole funding of the school. The 1.5 million that we were approving specifically was to hire project management and the feasibility assessment. That was well explained at town meeting, but we could clarify for those minutes.
So I apologize for the late delivery of those. I didn't get them till this morning. I've been trying desperately to get the notes the Sunday before the meeting, so that way I have a little bit of time to make sure that they're correct and then send them out. So,
Extensive, Mr. Chairman, why don't we wait? Why don't we
Yeah,
make the
because he
changes
got
and
that
present
wording
next week?
already.
yeah, I can send them out for next meeting.
I sent my comments last minute too.
Yeah. He sent them like 5 minutes before.
Yeah, okay,
so I-
so there's no problem,
Yeah, we can approve them next time.
right. I mean, it'll be quick. All right. There were a lot of changes, so.
Yeah.
Yeah, there was more than I think we should probably vote on then.
Second. Oh, no, not second.
Move to adjourn.
Sort
I
of,
thought,
Move for next week, Roger.
Was that a motion to
Bill
adjourn?
sort of withdrew his motion, right?
You can't beat this level of cooperation.
I thought you had somehow heard that somebody had made a motion to adjourn.
So move.
Second.
Raven seconded.
I'll take Roger's second. Thank you, everyone.
Okay, good night.
Thank you, Bill.